Hey, what's up guys? This is 4Sequence here, doing something a little bit different than I normally do on my channel. I've never been a big commentary person, but I think with, with the new game, and with the fact that everybody's still trying to figure out how to use certain types of builds, and that there isn't really a lot of information out there on sorcery builds in general, I thought it would be good to just sit down and do a commentary for everybody that's interested in learning a playstyle to use sorcery at medium close ranges, which is where I think a lot of people are having trouble. So what you're watching here, this is actually some very old footage. This is from, I think, April 17th and 19th. So the game had only been out about a week internationally or so. Everybody's still kind of figuring stuff out. And what you're seeing me do here is I'm practicing and trying to establish a baseline for my playstyle. And what I'm doing with this video, I'm also kind of collecting my thoughts because I'd like to eventually do a more formal guide on how to work with this kind of build. But right now what you're seeing here is you're seeing me kind of trying to figure things out in regards to Soulmass combos, and I'm also kind of establishing with how viable I can make this build. And with that being said, I guess it's time I should address the elephant in the room, which is, yes, I am using a dark sword in this video. This isn't a weapon that I use super often, especially these days now that I'm a little bit more comfortable with the build and with my tactics. I kind of know I have a better idea of what I'm doing now, so something like a dark sword isn't really entirely required. But at this point I figured they'd make good training wheels, more or less. They give me a good option for getting people to back off if they're coming in with like meta arrangements, meta play styles. Like, if they're coming in with their own dark sword or their own S-stock or whatnot, I at least have an option. And also it was suggested to me, and you'll see kind of here an interesting example of it. Dark swords get S scaling with magic when you infuse them with crystal, so it's actually a nice little tool for kind of chewing through great shields a little bit. You saw, like, that guy kind of tried to turtle for a little while. I started wailing on his shield for a bit, and he immediately noticed he was taking damage. He's not safe behind that shield anymore, so he starts going out there with the sword. So, I mean, there are multiple reasons that I kind of have this. It's also, the other reason that I have Dark Sword is, in this video, or at least in this footage, I'm experimenting with homing Soulmass combos. And what I mean by that, I don't mean the kind of thing where, like, you just put it up, you turn around, then you turn back and you fire, a soul arrow or a soul spear or whatever. I mean, you see me kind of going in here and backstepping and kind of maneuvering and trying to work people almost into a corner. And the Dark Sword is very good for that because it has, like all straight swords, it has very wide swings, it has very good range. So if I'm backing into somebody and I'm trying to engineer that combo, this is a really great tool for starting to learn it. At least you start to learn the angles for where Soulmass actually works, actually hits when you're approaching people like that. But at the end of the day, it's training wheels. This isn't really a statement, although there's a part of me, little part of me that's worried that maybe I'm gonna make a bunch of Soulmass Dark Sword monsters as a result of this video. But it is what it is. I think this build requires enough finesse that you're not going to see a lot of people pick it up and just derp around with it and immediately get results. So anyway, like I said, my focus, at least the focus I had at the time when I was recording this footage, was I had 3 things I was working on. Like I said, I was working on Soulmass combos, figuring out how, what was that? That was that was pretty awful. I was also trying to figure out White Dragon Breath, get an idea of how I could hit people with it, if I could even use it as a ranged spell, or if I had to use it as a close range mix-up, which is pretty much the case at this point. It's basically exceptionally difficult to use at long range. And I was also working with Farron, Flashsword, and Greatsword. There were a few things that I kind of figured out over the course of these couple days with those two in terms of combos that I could use and things like that. So there were a lot of tactics that I didn't know, that I now know about these combinations of spells. I didn't realize at the time that you could actually just clip people with the row of Soulmass, so you see me, like, as I'm maneuvering, I'm actually kind of trying to keep people from colliding with the row, you know, as I'm approaching, as they're approaching me. But these days, I actually just try to crash people right into it. In Dark Souls 1, which is where I kind of developed the playstyle, you would actually lose your shots if somebody collided with it, and it would only do, like, you know, a little handful of damage. So it was imperative to keep people from running into it, whereas in here, you can just barrel right in, try to hit people with it. I also didn't know about Flashsword, Greatsword, roll catch combos, which is something I'll get into. I actually don't really get into very much in this video, but I'll be getting into more in a future video. And my maneuvering with Soulmass was a little bit shaky at the time. And despite all that, I think I did pretty well, which I'll show you what I mean by that in a second, but things worked out pretty good with this build. I was a little concerned going into it. I thought this is going to be trash. My old favorite playstyle is going to be useless, but I'm pretty happy now. I'm pretty happy with how it's going. And as soon as this fight's done, I'm going to show you something interesting. I had people saying before, you know, you must be spending hours and hours getting this footage, and check this out. I'll let the recording dates talk. So starting at 5:42 a.m. on the 17th, next one's 5:47, 5:50, 5:53, 5:55, 5:58, 6 a.m. Those were the fights you just watched. So that right there that you saw, that was a streak. That's not me fishing around for, like, oh, let me just cherry pick the handful of wins that I get. No, you can run streaks with this build based on the fact that, at least at this point, not a lot of people know how to counter it. And even the ones that kind of do, that kind of have an idea, you can still sort of make it work. I have actually, in the Dragon Mage video that I made a little while back, which is the basis for this build, by the way. This is the same build as, you know, that Reviving the Dragon Mage video is that I did. I actually fought a rather well-known player the night that I was recording that. If you go and you watch the last fight in that, it's actually against a guy named Emne, who's he's actually very well known for hunting down and trolling streamers on Twitch. And he's really good. It was a very intense fight. I enjoyed it a lot. You know, he's really strong. He's a really strong player, but you can make it work. You can make this kind of build work. So let that dispel the rumor that Magic builds are utter trash across the board. That was a pretty good combo right there. See, you can do high damage combos with Magic. It's possible. You just have to be a little bit creative. So I don't know. I'm gonna, from this point forward in the video, I guess what I'll do is I'll try to kind of commentate the matches. I'll try to explain the thoughts that are going through my head as I'm fighting. Right now, I'm sort of setting up. So the first thing that I do with Soulmass is there's one major imperative, which is you do not want to give up the row immediately. A lot of people, they'll throw up Soulmass, they'll turn around, like I say, they'll turn around, then they'll turn back towards you, fire off a Soul Arrow or a Soul Spear. That's sort of the classic Soulmass combo that a lot of people use, and it does have its place. It definitely does have its place. But I have some different imperatives when I'm putting it up. I'm looking for three things. The first thing I'm looking for is I'm looking for them to do something punishable, something where they stand in the same place and maybe throw a really long swing that they didn't want to throw, or maybe they decide, hey, now I can buff my sword or something. And then all I have to do is just turn around and look at them and hit them for something up to like 600 damage. It's pretty severe. The second thing that I generally try to do is I try to do this thing that I call split fire, which is I'll try to hit somebody with the edge of the Soulmass targeting cones so that not all the shots will go off. You'll only see 1 or 2 or 3 shots go off. And that's a little bit of a harassment technique right there. Usually if I do that, I'm not going to be able to fully commit to the third option, which is a Soulmass combo, which you see me attempting there. I'm kind of seeing if he's going to get close enough. I'm seeing if he's going to get close enough for me to hit him with Farron Flashsword, but he's sort of smart, he backs off. But now he's coming in a little bit hot, so... Another interesting thing, the reason why I use White Dragon Breath is it has a little bit of synergy with Soulmass in kind of a surprising way. The two of them, White Dragon Breath and Homing Soulmass, they have the same casting animation. And when you're doing this thing that I'm doing here, where I'm sort of zoning people out, I'm forcing them to back off and be patient, once that row goes down, they're gonna come charging in like a bull in a china shop. So you back off, you do the same thing, or at least I do the same thing that I normally do with Soulmass, which is I'll turn around and I'll start the cast, but then I'll turn back around at them and try to hit them with a free-aimed White Dragon Breath shot. So that's what I kind of call, I call that the mix-up. So White Dragon Breath for me now, it's a mix-up tool. Once in a while I might hit somebody at range, which is pretty sweet, but as a mix-up tool, if you can nail people in that little, in that short range where they're charging at you, you can make it work really, really well. So here I'm just sort of fighting this guy. He's pretty aggressive, so I'm going to try the mix-up, but he backs off. So I basically, at this point, I've decided the mix-up is useless. You can only really do that once, and then they're kind of aware that it's going to come out. You can still land it after that, but you have to really condition them to want to just charge straight in at you. And the smart players, what they'll do is when they see the mix-up, they'll start charging at you, but then they'll roll away at the last second just as a safety measure. So you do get a side benefit off of it. Like if they're getting impatient because you're zoning them with Soulmass, they start charging in, you throw out the White Dragon mix-up and you miss, they're going to start respecting your Soulmass castings a lot more, because one of two things could happen when you put that catalyst up. Either I'll end up putting Soulmass up and I'll suck you into the crazy vortex of patience all over again, or I'll just spin around and fire off Dragon Breath. And they have to kind of respect that option. If you can show them that you're free aiming it properly, they'll start respecting it. So anyway, back to the fight. There's my other meta option. Crystal Sage Rapier. And actually, this one, unlike the Dark Sword, I don't think I'm going to be dropping that one anytime soon, and the reason for that is it's more thematic than anything. When I was using my Dragon Breath when I was using my Dragon Mage in Dark Souls 1, I tended to use Velka's Rapier a lot. It was a good get-off-me tool, and it was a good kind of proactive defensive measure because, you know, you could shield poke every once in a while. Since dragons don't have any defense, you know, I figured my best defense is a good offense. So the Rapier is really more for dragon mode, but also just out of loyalty to Velka's Rapier. So this guy's not having too much luck. Hit him with the Soul Greatsword when he's charging. That's a little dangerous right there. Trying to hit somebody with Soul Greatsword while they're charging straight at you, that's a bit of a risk. I would probably rather do Dragon Breath just because it extends a little bit farther. But it works. It works somehow. Anyway, this is the last fight from the 17th. After this fight, we're going to be transitioning into the 19th. And just taking a look at what I'm doing. I'm not really going for the mix-up this time. Or I'm not really going for Soulmass. There it is. There we go. I'm thinking about it. I don't know why I'm not putting it out there. Just going in there with the training wheels. Flashsword. Come on, do something interesting. Alright. Soulmass is up. Let's see what I do. If there's anything interesting I can glean from this. Try to back in, try to get the combo, miss. Those combos are tricky. Those combos can be very, very tricky, but you actually have a lot of options with them. I used to... In Dark Souls 1, I was getting to the point where I was trying to put Pyromancy in there, I was trying different weapons. At one point I was trying a Great Bow, trying to mix up Soulmass and Great Bow. He's starting to charge in, so I might be thinking about throwing the Dragon Breath mix-up in at this point. I kind of wasted... Yeah, there it is! There it is! See, there's a method. There's a method to the madness. You just gotta watch for that aggression. Gotta watch for that aggression, respond appropriately, throw in some Flashsword, and he's very, very close to death. One more Flashsword running attack. That running attack is super, super good. I love that running attack. Especially since depending on if you one-hand or you two-hand the catalyst, you can actually do it from either side, so you can target an individual side with it. It's kind of interesting. Okay. Actually, I'm just realizing there are a couple of things, there are a couple of other major topics that I should probably touch on before I go too much further into the match commentary. The first one is unlocked play, and a couple of suggestions for this. So this build relies, as you're seeing, this build relies a lot on unlocked play. One thing that's going to help you out quite a bit, if this is something that's uncomfortable for you, if any of you have, if you've heard of claw control before, basically what you do is, it's an alternative way of gripping your controller. It's something that I kind of trained myself into in Dark Souls 1. And it helps out unlock play, not only for this build, but for any build, tremendously, because essentially what you're doing is you're giving yourself full control over your character and camera without sacrificing the use of the space buttons, or the face buttons rather, so you know, you can roll, you can use items, you can do you can two-hand, all that stuff. And basically what you do is, the finger that you would normally hit the R1 button with, you're going to curl that finger down, and you're going to kind of rest your knuckle, either your first or second knuckle, whatever's more comfortable for you, on the circle button. So that lets you, that means you don't have to use your thumb. You can use your thumb for the analog, and like I said, it's incredibly important. It's incredibly important for this playstyle. So if this is something that you're interested in, I would thoroughly recommend starting to work on training yourself into it. If it's not something you do initially, it's going to take a little while to get used to. It is going to kind of cramp your hand up a little bit, but super, super important tool to have. The other topic I want to talk about is hard counters. So as I've been using this build and this playstyle in this game for a while, I've been noticing a few particular weapons that have been giving me trouble in terms of hard counters, and these are things that I'm still figuring out how to get around. So probably the most difficult hard counter to deal with is the washing pole, and to a lesser extent katanas, because they don't quite have the range, but the washing pole is an absolute terror to deal with on this build. If somebody's really good at nailing that running attack, they can shut you down really hard if you're trying to get away and throw down Soulmass. So in that case, that's where you're going to need a backup weapon, or you're going to need to use a lot of Farron Flashsword in order to get your sort of get off me effect into play. But a good katana user is just not going to back off. He's going to stay in your face, he's going to keep running. So for that, I think really the only way you can deal with that is solid fundamentals. Just have solid fundamentals in PvP. The next thing that really gets me when I'm playing this build, it's a very specific weapon, the Twin Prince Greatsword. If you know, the Twin Prince Greatsword has a move where you go into the stance, you go into that standard sort of straight sword stance, but when you do the forward thrust, you get a giant white laser beam, essentially. That thing absolutely punishes this playstyle consistently. It's very, very difficult to deal with. The hitbox is pretty damn good, and combining that with the phantom range, I mean, you'll get hit by that thing when you don't even see it. When you don't even see it connect, so it's tricky. Third thing that kind of is difficult to deal with are halberds. Halberds are weapons that control space incredibly effectively. So, you know, they have straightforward attacks, they have sweeping attacks. A lot of them have those really, really devastating combos, which means if you screw up your execution, if you're trying to play very, very heavy spell play with Soulmass and Greatsword and Flashsword and all those, you can't make a single mistake. You have to be on your toes at all times, because, you know, they can close a distance, they can manage space around you really well, they can operate from mid-range. It's just, you have to respect it. And then the last thing that is kind of a hard counter, but not as much as it used to be in Dark Souls 1, are spears. Actually, spears, it's pretty obvious why, for a similar reason as the halberd. It controls space, you get those thrusting attacks. You know, they can poke you from a pretty solid range. But I don't find them as scary as halberds, just because, you know, they don't have as many sweeps or super devastating combos. So, but it's still something to take into account. So, something that you want to kind of keep in mind. So anyway, back to the fights. Let's see what's going on here. So I'm throwing up Soulmass again. I'm probably going to try to go for a combo right now. Ooh, I go for a White Dragon. That's a combo I used to use a lot in Dark Souls 1. You probably saw me try to make it work quite a few times in this video. I've since kind of given up on that. Unless you're really, really confident that you're going to nail somebody, you have to kind of pull it off at mid-range, and your aim has to be incredibly precise. Because White Dragon Breath, I feel like if White Dragon Breath had the hitbox that the Twin Prince Greatsword Laser had, it'd be really good. But you gotta hit people dead on, like you just saw there. You have to hit them with the center of the beam. Center of their beam has to connect with their body somehow. The crystals are actually not a hitbox. Hitbox is very, very thin. Yeah, it looks like this guy's about dead. Hit him with Flashsword, and we got the deal sealed right there. So, not a bad option. By the way, I have Tears of Denial on in this. I kind of like to do the thing where, you know, you get 10 Faith, you get the Priestess Ring, and you swap in some spell slot rings so that you can cast Tears. I do that in Invasions too. It's not just a thing that I do when I host. You kind of have to sacrifice a flask for it, but I feel like it's kind of useful. It's nice to have. But I don't really invade on this build a lot either. I'm actually more of a duelist at heart in these games. Throwing up another Soulmass, get a good row clip. So those techniques I mentioned before, row clipping and row crashing, you know, they're basically both techniques where you get somebody to collide with the row. Clipping is just you're trying to get a little extra damage without going into a full-on Soulmass combo. So it might be like, say you cast, you turn around, they rush you, you roll through them, you get maybe 100, 200 damage, you get your space back, that's clipping. Row crashing is when you actually work that into a full combo, and you're actually going to see a good example of that right at the end of this video. That pretty much completely devastates somebody. So, got a new fight here. This guy's buffing. I really should be throwing those dual charms. I'm a lot better on that now, on throwing the dual charms at buffs. And Soulmass actually gives you a good opportunity to do so, because if they run in on you, you can use the dual charm as a Soulmass combo. You hit them, take away the buff at the same time, so just another way to use the spell. You can also use Soulmass to you know, cover your own buffs. So, very, very good tool for working around that kind of thing. I try the White Dragon Breath again. That just... either I need to get on point with that combo or I need to drop it completely. I don't think it's very viable. Just trying to throw that out at range to see if it works. It's way, way too slow. Stick to close range with that, definitely. So I kind of gave up on that. I'm gonna try the Flashsword combo. He's not close enough, but I still managed to get a hit in, and we're good to go. All right, so this next fight, this next fight is just kind of a silly little thing. This is kind of the reaction that a lot of people have to magic builds. It's like, oh, how cute! It's a magic build. I'm gonna applaud. Then I truck him a little bit for the combo. It's like, what the fuck was that? What the fuck is that? I'm gonna lay down. I'm in like full edgelord mode, so I just run in. Give him a taste of his medicine. Walk away. Cue the Linkin Park theme. So edgy. I gotta work on those edgelord tendencies. That's a little silly. Alright, Soulmass. Ooh, doing with the buff, starting to work the catalyst buff in. I should really, that's another thing that I'm working on doing a little bit more, is buffing my catalyst a little bit more often. Just good to get that damage in. You know, this isn't the kind of build where you're trying to save lots of FP. You're just trying to layer damage onto them as much as possible, so you need to use as many moving parts as you can. Crystal Sage staff. Sometimes I like to switch off between that and Court Sorcerer, just because the Crystal Sage staff gets you that really, really strong spell buff. Once that runs out, you switch off to the Sorcerer, and you're in good shape. Let's see if I can get another mix-up here. Stop doing that! Stop doing that, White Dragon Breath, man. That worked so well in Dark Souls 1, it still makes me sad. Get a little row clip, go through, get the safe position, try to back in, set up another White Dragon Breath combo. I'm really not I'm really not giving up on this at this point. I want to make it work so much, but I gotta stick to it as the mix-up. Halberds right there trucked me for like 60% damage. That's why I have to be really careful around those. So, let's see. This next fight. Oh, okay. This is a good example of. So this build is a little bit anti-meta in a couple of ways. It always has been. And here's one of the ways. Straight swords and rapiers. Both of those weapons require, if you're using a straight sword or a rapier and that's your main game plan, you need people to come in at you. You know, those weapons don't work as well in like full-on offense mode as you might think. And actually I just realized I forgot the Ember, and I forgot to put the tears on, but I really don't feel like straight swords, now that I have a better idea of how to use it, I really don't feel like straight swords and rapiers are all that scary. Dude, chugs, you know, standard dark sword, reliant. Standard. I shouldn't even say that. I shouldn't even talk shit. You know, I'm using a dark sword in this video. I don't really get to talk shit. So, I switched off to the rapier. I think the rapier is a little bit better than the dark sword, so this kind of outranges it, a little more straightforward. Chase the guy down. Get that last rapier poke. You know, I wasn't really interested in being flashy at that point. I just wanted him out of my world. So, it's good to have anti-meta backup options, have a rapier, have a dark sword in the back pocket, just throw it on your build once in a while. Just to counter particular playstyles, or if people are just being annoying. The more options you have, the better. With this build, you have so many options with this that you can really cloud somebody's ability to predict you. So yeah, I'm trying really hard to maneuver in. I still don't really fully understand the implications of row clipping, so I'm trying to keep distance. Now I would just backstep straight towards you, maintain a lot less space. Oh, I remember this fight. So this fight's the one where I kind of messed around with canceling Soul Greatsword, and I think I got a neat little cancel in there eventually that mind gamed them into taking a hit, but I don't think the cancel is really all that useful in this game. I guess you can kind of get the catalyst out in front of your body for a split second, so you know, you can pull maybe a third of a second off their ability to predict it, but it's not as useful as Dark Souls 2, that's for sure. Dark Souls 2, a game that I didn't really play a lot, but had pretty decent magic. I didn't like the movement system. Like with the stuff that I'm doing here, it was a lot harder to do in Dark Souls 2 because like the movement and pivoting was a little weird. And here's something annoying. Here's something annoying that I'm trying to get out of my playstyle. That little accidental jump right there. I'm not really used to using R3 as a jump because, you know, again, I wasn't really a big Dark Souls 2 player. I've since actually turned it back to Dark Souls 1 because I unlock so much. I play unlocked so much, and you know, if I'm pulling a hard pivot and I accidentally go a little bit too hard with the analog stick and jump, I might put myself in the way of, you know, upwards of like 800, 900 damage if I'm fighting a halberd. So, if you're really, really good unlocked, you don't have to do that, but you know, if that's becoming a problem, you know, just take your jump button off of R3 just so you don't put yourself in stupid positions. You're not going to be doing a lot of running into rolls, so in this case, might as well go old school. This guy's going to heal. There you go. And in about 30 seconds or so, you're going to see a good example of a row crash. Remember, row clipping is when you just hit him with the side of the row and get away, maintain your row. Row crashing is when you work it into a combo. And it's really, really good for situations like this, where somebody's just healing all over the place. It's one of the best ways to layer damage. Row crash into Soulmass, into, I think, Flashsword spam it's gonna be. Let's find out. Oh, the Dark Sword. Those training wheels, man. They keep kicking in. They keep kicking in. Anyway, on that note, I'm gonna call it a day with this commentary. I actually have a lot more backlog footage on my PS4, so I'm definitely going to be doing at least one more. I'm also going to be putting up probably a little mini montage later with some immolation tinder footage that I was working with. But if any of you guys who are watching, if you have any questions at all about the build or the tactics, or you have a suggestion for something you want me to try, definitely let me know in the comments. I'd like to see as many people kind of get over their fear of sorcery as possible in this game, because I think it could be a very, very good PvP tool. So, you know, just stick around if you'd like some more information, and yeah, I will see you guys at the next video. Thanks for hanging on for so long, and have a good one, everybody. Take care.